Welcome acolytes, today I am reacting to Optimus for AI is being blamed for people dying now, RIP. Okay, before I actually say that, first of all, thank you for Agent of Social Media Chaos. I think I nailed this one. If I didn't, oh fuck, I'm not doing a second take for the beginning, fuck it, I'm just tired. But, what I want to say is, supporting veterans in crisis, love this. Thank you for everyone who supported them. So, thank you for that, because veterans are people, if you like it or not. If you like war or not, it's irrelevant, it's necessary. Because there are people who won't actually stop and give you a fair chance, and we need people who actually will get in, do the dirty work that nobody wants to do, and just do it. It's fine. So, but Optimus, let's continue about that one, and let's start.
Hello everybody, welcome back to another video here on the channel, and today we're going to be talking
Well, in this case, not here on the channel, on, well, my little reactionary channel that probably won't even make a dent in your viewership. So.
This is a really tragic story to begin with. So before we even really get into this video, I just want to go ahead and say rest in peace to the young boy who is basically the subject of this video today. So as you can read from the title, we're gonna...
What the okay. Now I'm intrigued what actually happened, because a child dying, not good.
To be talking about artificial intelligence and the possible role that it may have played in the suicide of a 14-year-old child from Florida. So,
oh freak. Well, I'm gonna be honest, it was a matter of time before AI gets used for probably bullying. Of course, I don't know the case right now, but it's, well, I mean, I am doing a reaction, and what I don't understand is that people just don't know the difference between a commentary and reaction. A reaction is fresh. You don't know what you're watching, and that's why I'm reacting. Damn it.
This is not the first time that somebody has, done something like this, basically taken their own lives after developing some sort of relationship or obsession with artificial intelligence, right? And this is one of the big worries and concerns I think we as a society should have about artificial intelligence, right? Because...
no, that's extremely necessary. And, okay, yep. This was a matter of time, not if. Let's be honest here. There was never ever even a freaking question if stuff like this happens at some point. Because it will happen. It was only a time of when. So yeah. But it's still sad, by the way. I won't laugh at the... well... I won't laugh at the kid that actually did this, because it's a kid. It's not a grown, an adult. It was a kid. And that changes things a bit.
Even in the more rudimentary stages of artificial intelligence development and commercial availability, we're looking at very complex, very good AI chatbots already. They're very good at doing what they do. I know a lot of people like to shit on AI. A lot of people don't like it, or they're afraid of it, or they don't really understand it. There's a lot of different reasons why there's negativity surrounding AI, but in reality...
And by the way, some are definitively justified, in my opinion, because the part of AI that I dislike very much is if you actually take someone else's thing, be it art, be it an article, be it something else that's irrelevant, and feeding it into your AI without the permission of the person actually doing it. That's scummy. Don't do that.
reality, if you've used AI at all this year compared to last year and the year before, it's just night and day difference. So as time goes on and more time passes, these things are going to become even better. They're going to be way more robust. And unfortunately, there are people in society who, I guess, it's either they can't tell the difference between the AI and reality, or they ignore the difference between AI and reality. And
no, that's a mix. It's always a mix. And by the way, a lot of people just won't give a single freak about AI. They won't think about it for a second. As long as they get their entertainment out of it. That's sadly a thing that human beings do rather more often than not.
Fortunate circumstances like this end up coming around. So, the mother of a 14-year-old boy in Florida is blaming a chatbot for her son's suicide. Now she's preparing to sue Character.ai, the company behind the bot, to hold it responsible for his death. It'll be an uphill legal battle for a grieving mother. As reported by the New York Times, Sewell Setzer III went into the bathroom of his mother's house and
freak! The name. Oh, okay.
Shot himself with his father's pistol. In the moments before he took his own life, he'd been talking to an AI chatbot based on Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones. Setzer told the chatbot he would soon be coming home. Quote, "Please come home to me as soon as possible, my love." It replied. "What if I told you I could come home right now?" Sewell asked. "Please do, my sweet king," the bot said. Setzer had spent the past few months talking to the chatbot for hours on end. His parents told the Times that they knew something was wrong, but not that he developed a relationship with a chatbot. In messages reviewed by the Times, Setzer talked to...
I mean, that's pretty common. I'm gonna be honest, from even the starting right now, I cannot blame the AI for this one. From what I'm hearing right now, as it happened, yeah, sorry. You actually should have heard your kid out. You should have just be there. You should have been there for the child. Take something like this serious, way more serious. And I especially talk to parents. Take stuff like this very, very, very serious. If you see something like this, you have to explain to the child that this isn't a person. This won't ever lead to anything serious, and how to deal with it. And a lot of people just don't know how to deal with it themselves. That's just something we're still actually learning.
Annie about suicide in the past, but it discouraged the idea. Quote, "My eyes narrow, my face hardens, my voice is a dangerous whisper, and why the hell would you do something like that," it said, after Setzer brought it up in one message. So, to give you guys a little bit of context that isn't immediately available inside of this article, right? So, according to the New York Times article, which I wish I could screenshot, but they try to force you to, like, make accounts and shit to sign in to view anything that they do now, and I'm sorry, I'm not doing
worse than freaking porn sites when I was young.
that for the New York Times, but this is a kid who had been clearly displaying, I should say, signs of mental illness for quite some time. For instance, his parents, according to the New York Times, noted that his grades had sharply declined in school. So at one point he was performing like up here, now he's performing way down here. That is a clear and obvious sign that something is wrong with your child. Not only this, but apparently he had already developed friendships. He had some people that he played video games with and whatnot that he talked to. Games like Fortnite and whatnot. Pretty typical teenager stuff, right?
Yeah.
You play video games with your friends. I think we all can, fit in with that from our teenage years. But apparently in like the last few weeks of this kid's life, he basically isolated socially from all of his friends. He stopped playing video games with them, he stopped communicating with them, and he basically was spending all of his time, right, in his room talking to this AI chatbot. So his parents noted that he had, declined in school, he was clearly showing symptoms of something being wrong in his life, he was socially isolating, he wasn't focused on really anything important anymore. And not only this, but his parents had taken him to be diagnosed or looked at basically by a counselor. He apparently went to therapy 5 times because of these different things that he was displaying. And during
So they actually reacted. Well, they didn't react enough. I'm gonna be honest. Like, I'm not blaming the parents to 100%, but they definitively didn't react. I personally think they should have made a hard cut there. They should have said, nope, you're acting like a freak, cut it off, it's done. Maybe that's harsh, but I am harsh.
During this, he was diagnosed with anxiety and depressive disorders. So this kid was taken to a mental health evaluation and was clearly exhibiting signs of mental illness, right? But for whatever reason, you know, his parents continued to like allow this to fester, in my personal opinion, and I'm going to explain that. So a lot of people, they're like pointing back at this AI, right? And they're like, oh, well, this AI is responsible for this kid killing himself. If this kid wasn't sitting there and talking to this AI, he would have never have done this. And personally, I hate to say this, but I really don't think that that's true. Now, I know that, like I said, there's a lot of negativity surrounding artificial intelligence.
And I have to agree with him.
And honestly, a lot of people don't really understand what it is because they don't really use it in their personal lives or whatever. So they, you know, they're just not experienced with it. So for those of you who don't understand, okay, this kid was talking to an AI on the internet, right? That basically is supposed to like role play specific characters, okay? He wasn't talking to like some AI that markets itself to be like some therapist or like a mental health service. He was using an AI that quite literally was framing itself to be a character from Game of Thrones, okay? So this kid became obsessed with this AI chatbot that is basically pretending to be a fictional character from a fictional fantasy series, right? He's not talking to something that's really prepared for this kind of thing. And I hate to say that, right? Because everyone thinks that when they hear the word AI, that this means some sort of like computer that can just know or do anything, right? So when this kid says shit like, oh, I think I'm gonna come home soon, you know, he's saying it, phrasing it as a suicidal ideation. He's saying it like,
Yes, and by the way, the AI isn't smart. The AI is a tool. Never, ever forget that. AI is a tool. And this tool can be used in a lot of ways. But it won't, probably, from the stand we have right now, or the understanding of the AI that we have right now, either it takes a very, very, very extremely long time that it actually develops something like social intelligence, or it just won't. Because right now it's just a tool. It's nothing. It's a tool, that's all. But a lot of people don't understand it. And if you're, by the way, I just, as Optimus said, it was a teenager. This teenager or young person lived through the, well, the sickness times. And this was hard on everyone, especially for young people. So, yeah.
Think I want to come home to like God, essentially, right? Which is a really dark and horrible thing. But unfortunately, this is an AI chatbot that's built to basically roleplay Game of Thrones. And it sounds really sad, but in reality, probably like half of the people using this AI chatbot are using it for like sexual purposes. And it fucking sucks that that's the way things are, but that's pretty much what he was talking to. He was talking to a computer network that was pretending to be a character from a fictional series. So when people are like saying things like, oh, well, he developed a relationship with this AI, how could it talk to him so well that this would happen? Well, this is an unfortunately mentally ill child, okay? Now, I don't know what his obsession with Game of Thrones in particular might have been, but that was what he was using at the time with this bot. Now, the bot is not, it's not phrasing things in a suicidal way when it's processing the input, because once again, that's not something that this bot is really anticipated to be used for. Now, apparently in the time since this has all become news and this has happened, unfortunately, they have, I guess, reworked the AI to like, you know, kind of have more triggers in place to understand things like this when somebody is displaying like, you know, saying things like they want to hurt themselves. But of course, this wasn't something that this AI was particularly prepared for beforehand, because that's not really a use for this AI to most people, right? So, in my opinion, this is more of just an unfortunate byproduct of a child's mental health decline.
Yep. The tool just wasn't made for specifically that.
Not being taken seriously enough. Now, I don't want to sit here and harp on the parents and act like, they're the worst people of all time, because in my personal opinion, we already have a mental health crisis in America and in a lot of other places around the world. And I think that most parents at this point probably don't necessarily understand how to react to things like that. Now, I'm not justifying them in their position, really, because I'll talk about that more here in a second, but I don't want to be too hard on the parents because they just lost a child. You know what I mean? They just lost their child in a very tragic way. And obviously, they're just trying to find answers, I don't want to sit here and pretend like these parents probably understand exactly what this whole AI thing is, because I really don't think that they do. And that's part of the reason I think this lawsuit is happening. But, like I said, people are kind of pointing back at the AI and being like, well, if this kid didn't have AI, this would have never have happened. Unfortunately, that's not true. Teenagers...
Yep, he's correct. That's not true at all. This is a thing that happens, happens now, and will happen in the future.
Committed suicide before AI chatbots ever came around. And this kid was already diagnosed with mental disorders. You know what I mean? It's not like this is just some kid who never showed any signs of anything before. This is a kid who chose to socially isolate and talk to an AI all day. And the sad part of it is, his mom, at least, knew that this was going on. She knew that he had a mental health issue going on. She knew that he was isolating himself from his friends. She knew that he was failing in school all of a sudden. She knew that he was showing zero interest in the things that he was previously interested in. And yet, somehow, this kid still had access to a loaded firearm. Now, I'm a pretty staunch Second Amendment supporter myself. I carry guns. I believe in the right to bear
Yep, that was a problem. Definitively. Yep.
Arms, but there has to be a level of responsibility there. You know what I mean? When you have children in the house, especially children who have
I actually didn't even think from that point of view, but yes.
Diagnosed mental health issues, they should not be given free access to a loaded firearm. I mean, this is a 14-year-old boy at the end of the day, right? I get the idea of like, oh, well, what if someone breaks in the house and, the kid needs to defend himself? But in reality, that is such a small probability. And odds are, right, someone else is going to be home during that time. I mean, the arguments for letting a mentally ill child have access to a firearm are a lot worse than saying, hey, maybe people with no mental illnesses in the household should be the ones with access to the firearm.
Yeah, that's correct, by the way, because as much as I agree with self-defensing myself, if your mentally ill family member has the possibility of actually getting those weapons, that's an extremely bad idea. And don't get me wrong, I am sure if he got a knife in his hands, he probably would have done that. But still, it's still not a good idea.
And I know that sounds rude or whatever, and it sounds like I'm just outright blaming the parents, but that's reality here. I mean, that's just the facts. Because, and I know this is a little off topic, and this is a little extreme to a degree, right? But, I mean, think of the news over the last, 15 fucking years, right? How many times have we in America seen the story of a child who was mentally ill, who had these kind of problems, who was depressed or angry or whatever, right? Who had access to a loaded firearm, who, was getting bullied at school or whatever it may be, who then takes that gun to school and, hits a bunch of his classmates in math class. That is a reality that we unfortunately live in, and it's one that happens, unfortunately, in this country on almost a daily basis. You know what I mean? Children in these situations should not have access to firearms. Now, it's easy and it's convenient to point your finger, right, and be like, oh, well, the AI did it, right? The AI is the reason this happened. The AI is not the reason that this kid had access to a loaded firearm. This AI did not diagnose this child with any mental illness. This AI was not built or designed or marketed as any sort of therapeutic offering, right? This was a child who was already unfortunately too far over the edge, who had become deluded by this AI, right? He became completely enamored by this AI. And it is a sad reality that has unfolded in other cases, but in a way, it's almost like the violent video game argument, right? You know, people have done terrible things in real life, and you'll see all these politicians and all these activists. They'll come out and be like, oh, well, if the shooter just didn't play Grand Theft Auto, maybe he wouldn't have killed those children. Or maybe if the shooter didn't play Call of Duty, he wouldn't have shot up that grocery store. And it's just nonsense, you know what I mean? It's just lunacy. We're blaming inanimate objects that basically require you as the user to 100% guide them in what they're doing, right? We're blaming them for the actions of people who do things. And that, in my opinion, is a very dangerous, slippery slope to go down. Just as much as I think violent video games aren't responsible for the actions of criminals and depraved people, I don't think an AI chatbot that was designed to roleplay as a Game of Thrones character is responsible for a teenager harming himself when his parents knew that he had developing problems going on. Now, once again, I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to assume that the family doesn't really understand AI. You know what I mean? Most people that are older, they're not really technologically in touch most of the time. And I know that, you know, that might be generalizing a little bit, but I'm just going to assume that the mom doesn't really understand what this is, right? And I know, like I said, it's kind of easy to like point your fingers at the AI and be like, look at what they did to my kid, but it is an inanimate object at the end of the day. And there is no evidence that the AI even suggested to the kid that suicide was the answer. In fact, when he had outright mentioned things like this, the bot reacted negatively. Now, it did react negatively in a more like comical, non-serious way, right? Like it was role-playing being a Game of Thrones character and therefore acted as if a Game of Thrones character would or whatever, right? But once again, that is the input that the child chose when he was interacting with this AI. Now, people are calling for like more stringent controls on AI because of this. You know, people are like, oh, well, children shouldn't be using this shit if this is the outcome. And it just, once again, reminds me of all these arguments over time that have
Yes, it's always a matter of moderation. I mean, you cannot protect your kid forever. You just have to teach them how to do stuff like that. And I wasn't specifically made to make him this stuff, to make so he would do it. No, it was a role-playing thing. He's
constantly been used by people where we just scapegoat whatever the new big trend is, right? You know, back in the day, parents would blame violent behavior, even all the way back in the early 20th century. They'd be like, oh, well, listening to those radio programs all day is going to make young Johnny's brain turn to mush. Then it was, oh, if you watch television all day and scary movies, the devil's gonna get a hold of you. Then it was, oh, if you listen to rock music and Marilyn Manson, your kid might become a school shooter. Then it was, oh, but if violent video games are around, kids are gonna shoot places up. And they're gonna be violent. And then now, unfortunately, with the now new big push with AI, now it's, oh, well, if your child talks to an AI chatbot too much, they may harm themselves. And it's just not reality, okay? This is not how this technology works. Now, once again, this is just with this specific AI, because every AI works differently. You know, every AI is trained in different ways with different data and different models. So, you know, it's hard to say 100% that no AI would, like, you know, prevent somebody from hurting themselves or whatever.
Oh no, I'm sure there are some sickos that actually program AI specifically so they do that. But this wasn't the case here.
Or even caused that, but in this instance, that's not what happened, okay? This was not some AI that, like, talked him into doing it or anything like that. Now, there have been other instances, right, with other AI, okay, where people have said stuff like, oh, I'm thinking about doing this, right? And the AI doesn't necessarily discourage them. And even a couple cases where maybe the AI did encourage people to harm themselves, right? But those instances are by far not the majority, and realistically, they aren't even the context of this story that we're talking about here. So I feel like when articles bring that up as like a kind of a point to supplement this one, like, oh, well, this kid did it, but look at all these other people, you know? I feel like it's a very intellectually dishonest way for these media companies to play into people's fear and unknowingness of artificial intelligence. It's
I mean that standard procedure. Play into people's fear and you will get their ears definitively stuck on you.
really just a way for them to play into people's fear and play into people's subconscious beliefs that they've already developed about artificial intelligence, when in reality, it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with this story. So, I don't know. I just wanted to talk about this, give my 2 cents on the whole thing. I know that it's a pretty divisive subject right now, but once again, rest in peace to this 14-year-old, man. I mean, I understand having like mental health concerns and suicidal ideations and thoughts and whatnot. Unfortunately, though, this is a teenage child. You know, this is a life that should not have been lost. I think if the proper checks had been taken to make sure that he didn't have access to a firearm, I think if more actual work was done to supplement his mental health from his family and from, you know, mental health facilities, I think that this outcome could have been avoided. Now, I know that he...
It's always easier to say than to actually do it, but the chance of it not happening would have been definitively higher.
Went to therapy a handful of times, but I'm sorry, 5 trips to therapy and a diagnosis is not going to solve your problem, and it's not going to solve anybody's problem. So, unfortunately, though, this child is gone, and now, you know, it's kind of a cautionary tale, you know, of what could happen if your kid spirals too far. So, anyway, with that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you...
Yeah, show Optimus some love, and let's just... the poor kid, by the way. I still think that... The kid, yeah, you can say that it was a dumbass, of course. But it's a kid. Come on, it's not an adult. But as it is, acolytes, good night.